It says, "And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and much trembling. And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God." I'm going to start this off with a question. Starting this off with a question is, why are we so afraid to say things as they really are? Why are we afraid to say things as they really are? You know, I spoke last week, as a culture, we have comfortability and options and having many ways where people will say there's many ways to heaven, or you do you and all that. But why are we afraid to say things what they really are? We live in a world that has become masters at softening the truth. I may pronounce this wrong. I'm going to try not to. I know, but if it happens a couple of times, I apologize. But that's what a euphemism is. That's what a euphemism is. According to the Lexham Glossary of Theology, a euphemism is the substitution of one word or expression to replace another that is potentially disagreeable or even offensive. In other words, we will say something nicer than what we really mean. And euphemisms, I told you I'd do that, sorry. They can be used for a variety of reasons. They can be used in multiple ways. But here's some of our classic examples that we may have heard. You know, you may hear that you're not the sharpest tool in the tool shed, which is the polite way of saying you're dumb. You know, instead of saying I was fired, we might say I was let go. Instead of saying that someone has died, we may say they passed away. Instead of saying that someone is lazy, we might say, hey, you're a couch potato. Instead of saying I'm sick, we may say I'm feeling under the weather. And for the younger crowd, instead of saying, well, you may say, hey, I broke wind, or I cut the cheese, instead of saying I farted. And of course, we have the classic, bless your heart. Has anyone here been a victim of that one? You know you messed up. You know you messed up when you get the little pat on the shoulder. Oh, bless your heart. Like, you're not coming back from what you just said. Like, I know what you mean when you said that to me. And, okay, so. But to be fair, that one can also be used for true sympathy for someone as well. So I'm not going to just. But now, what about when euphemisms become dangerous? When euphemisms are not used to just be polite, but then when they're used to hide sin, when they're used to hide evil. A historical example of such during the Holocaust. The Nazis didn't just go around saying, hey, we're sending the Jews to die in gas chambers. They would say, we're resettling them. Or they are receiving special treatment. This was the word resettlement there. It was comforting. It was deceitful. It was to show that, hey, you might just be relocated, but in reality, they were led to their killing centers or death camps or the concentration camps that we know. And they were used to deceive, to hide, and to kill. And this still happens to this day. We will hear this stuff all through. And one of them, the biggest one. We won't say that we are being rebellious against God. They'll say, you are just being true to yourself. We use harmless words to excuse harmful actions. But God is not fooled by our soft words. In 1518, Martin Luther, he stood before scholars and other church leaders at the Heidelberg Disputation. This is where he was now given the opportunity to expound on some of his 95 theses that he nailed to Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany. And he makes a distinction, he makes a contrast here between theologians of glory and theologians of the cross. He says, he says that a theologian of glory will call evil good and will call good evil. But a theologian of the cross will call the thing exactly what it is. Not what it looks like, not what the culture says, not what makes us comfortable. He calls the thing what it is. He calls evil evil, he calls good good. He calls the thing what it is. So here's another question. When you share your faith, or when you are defending your faith in different apologetic settings, do you call the thing what it is? So he gives a distinction between the two types of people, the two types of theologians, or we can use it for the two types of apologists when defending our faith. The purpose of defending our faith is not to checkmate our opponents. It's not to rub it in their face, to use it as another notch in the belt. No. It's to proclaim the cross. It's to show the glory of God. But an apologist or theologian of glory seeks honor. They seek applause. They seek cultural approval. They focus on looking wise, sounding smart, doing anything to stay relevant. They will soften the gospel to make it more palatable for the world. And they will say what people want to hear versus what they need to hear. Moving to the next type. The theologian or apologist of the cross. They are willing to look foolish for the sake of Christ. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. They are willing to look foolish for the sake of Christ. They speak with humility. They also speak with truth. They refuse to dress the cross up to make it look pretty. And they believe that God's power and not man's. They believe it's God's power is what saves. So I ask again, something to think about for all of us in here. What type are you? Are we theologians of glory? Are we theologians of the cross? And this comes up in life always when we're constantly having to defend what we believe. In 1 Peter 3:15 says, "But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect." I often feel that's lost. For the one who seeks glory exhibits triumphalism. We're going to walk through what Paul says here again. In verse 1, it says, "And when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom." See, Paul, when he's addressing here, he's addressing a crowd, the church of Corinth. They are proud. They are appearance obsessed. And that's the culture. It's the culture they're in. They idolize eloquent speakers. And they measured the truth by their style. Paul is saying, I didn't come here to impress you. I didn't come here to impress you. I came here to tell you the truth. He's distinguishing now between the messenger and the message. For he is saying the messenger is not the one of importance. It's the message. It's the truth. It's the gospel of what's important. And some of us try so hard to be liked by everybody that we've lost our boldness. The world tries so hard to be liked that the boldness is gone. They're afraid to say the words. They're afraid to speak the truth because they want approval from man. And they want to sound wise. But wisdom that avoids the cross is not wisdom at all. Wisdom that avoids the cross is not wisdom. In verse 2, for I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. For I knew nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. Paul's not saying here that he knows nothing else. That's not what he's saying. What he is saying, he's saying that I made the decision here. I made the decision to preach one thing and one thing only. And that is Christ crucified. I'm not here to preach self-help. I'm not here to provide spiritual therapy. I'm not here to preach 5 steps to a better you. No, just Jesus, just the cross, and just his blood. Church has made the gospel too clean. Everyone wants an empty tomb without the cross. Everyone wants resurrection without death. But there is no resurrection without the crucifixion. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. You go back to Acts when Paul was in Corinth. The people reviled against him. He was among them with much fear. And he also alludes to the fact that he wasn't even an impressive speaker. In 2 Corinthians, he tells about when people were saying that my letters are weighty, but paraphrasing, but my speech is not. And he is in an area where they lift up speakers, where they value the eloquent speech. They value the rhetoric of the speaker. And again, they measure their truth by that and not by the message. He admits that he felt fear and he admits that he was trembling, but guess what? He preached anyways. I can't live up to these eloquent speakers, but you know what? I am boldly going to preach the truth. Why? Because faithfulness matters more than fear. Obedience to God matters more than your fear of man. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be eloquent. But what you do have to be is obedient. And that's what Paul was. He was obedient to the truth. My speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Paul was not worried about having followers. He wasn't. You see, in the beginning of this, there's already divisions in the church. Some are saying, I follow Apollos. Some say, I follow Cephas. Some say, I follow Paul. Some say, I follow Christ. And he asked the question, he says, is Christ divided? He says, is Christ divided? And he goes on to say that, I'm glad I didn't baptize any of you, so you can't say that you were baptized in the name of me. Paul's not worried about having followers, but what he is interested in is salvation. He's aware that clever arguments can sway the minds of men, but it's only the Holy Spirit that can change the heart. He didn't dress the gospel up. He didn't make this huge, elaborate speech. He didn't. He preached the gospel in its simplicity, and he delivered it plainly. He wasn't worried about the followers. And it was custom for the speakers of those days to go to the larger cities who would have followers based off their speech and their rhetoric. He didn't want followers for him. He wanted followers of Christ. So to take away from everything, to take away from this, it's just no more euphemisms. Euphemisms. You know, the cross is not a euphemism. It's a brutal reality. Sin is not just a slip up. No, sin is rebellion against a holy God. And salvation is not a suggestion. It's your only hope. Why cover that up with eloquent speech? Why? When that is what people need to hear. We can't hide behind soft words or polite phrases because none of those have the power to save you. God calls his people to speak boldly, to proclaim the truth, and to live without compromise. You cannot compromise the gospel. So, challenge for all of us, a challenge for all of us in here today is to think about these questions. Are you softening the truth to protect yourself? Are you compromising the gospel to sound more loving to the world? Are you more concerned about your reputation than you are your responsibility? If you answered yes, or thinking about any of those, then you are a theologian of glory and not of the cross. But God raises people. God raises people up who call sin what it is, who call the cross what it is, and who calls Christ who he is, which is Lord. If we're going to call things what they are, then we need to call ourselves what we are without Christ. For we are dead in sin. For we are separated from God. For we are blind, broken, and guilty and unable to save ourselves. That is who we are without the truth. That is who we are without Christ. No, that's not flattering. It's not flattering. And it's not a euphemism. But it is the truth. There's good news. There's good news. The kind of news that doesn't need to be dressed up. That while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jesus wasn't here with polished speech or a political strategy. He came in humility and in flesh and blood. And on the cross, he bore the full weight of all of our sin. The full weight of it all. Why would we hide? Why would we try to sugarcoat that? Because no approval of man will ever take over what that means for me, what that means for us. Jesus didn't die to improve your life. He didn't die to give you tips for a better living. He died to bring the dead to life. Jesus was crucified. He was crucified so that your heart can be made new. And that your eternity can be secured in Him. The good news, again, He didn't stay dead. He didn't stay dead. He rose again with all authority. So today, for everyone in here, and everyone all over, so to turn from your sin, trust in Jesus Christ, and believe the raw and rugged gospel, and not a watered down, puffy, fluffy version of it. Because there is no other name by which we are saved than Jesus Christ.